Welcome to the Pluto's Pioneer Program. We are very excited to have you all here. So let me first talk about the schedule. So the idea is that there will be lectures on every Thursday and Q&A sessions on every Tuesday. And in some weeks we might have additional lectures. For example, guest lectures or some topics that are not so relevant for the main curriculum. And because there are so many of you, it's unfortunately not possible to be as interactive as I'd like it to be. So it would be great if all of you could use the Discord server to help each other answer questions and solve problems. I mean, we will do what we can, my colleagues and myself, to answer questions and help, but with the sheer number of participants, it's just not possible to pay as much attention to every individual as we would like. So thank you for helping out. As for the content, so the idea is to really give a thorough introduction to Plutus, explain the underlying concepts, look at various types of contracts, look at how we can test contracts in the playground or also offline locally, talk about native tokens, how to control minting and burning of native tokens in Plutus. And we'll also look at how to deploy a Plutus contract and write a backend for a Plutus contract. Plutus learning is not easy, unfortunately. So you have to be aware that the course probably won't be easy. And there are a variety of reasons for that. So one is that Plutus uses the so-called eUTXO model. I'll explain in much more detail what that means later in this lecture. And that is different and less intuitive than the Ethereum method for doing smart contracts. It has a lot of advantages, the eUTXO model, but it also requires a new way of thinking about smart contracts. So that's one thing. And that's before we even start with the language itself. Then, of course, Plutus is brand new and still under rapid development. So probably during the time of the course, there will be significant changes. So we'll often have to update the dependencies on the main Plutus repository. And it might be that contracts that compile at the beginning of the course won't compile any longer towards the end of the course, because there have been some syntax changes. In addition to that, tooling is not ideal yet. So those of you who have experience with Haskell and know about the Haskell tooling will notice that in the presence of Plutus, some of the tooling is not as pleasant as you may be used to it being from doing Haskell. So sometimes it's a bit painful, so it's not as easy to get access to syntax of functions or to documentation from the REPL, for example. And it's not even very easy to build Plutus in the first place. So your best bet is probably using Nix. You can also try Cabal and Stack or Docker. Actually, the Plutus team will provide a nice Docker image at some point, so maybe that will then be the easiest option. But yeah, it's not totally trivial to get Plutus to compile in the first place. Then, of course, Plutus is Haskell, more or less. So on top of the other problems, you first have to have a firm grip on Haskell in order to do Plutus. And obviously, in the 8 weeks of course time, I won't have time to first do a proper, thorough Haskell course. The Haskell courses that I did in Greece, on Barbados, in Ethiopia, and then last year virtually in Mongolia were full-time courses, 10-week full-time courses, 40 hours a week. And even in those courses, we didn't cover everything that you will need to fully understand Plutus. Of course, we also covered things that are irrelevant for Plutus, so it's not as bad as it sounds. But nevertheless, there's a quite some Haskell that you need. And I won't have time to thoroughly explain everything. I'll try to explain the special concepts that you need for Plutus, obviously. And whenever there's a special need, when I see that a lot of you are struggling with something, then obviously I'll take the time to explain that topic in more detail. So unfortunately, I won't be able to spend as much time teaching Haskell as I'd like to, because obviously I mostly want to do Plutus. But we did record our Mongolia Haskell course, and we have started editing the videos and making them nicer and more concise. And what we have, we'll publish here for you on the Discord server, so that if you're struggling with Haskell and would like an introduction that's much slower paced, then you can give those videos a try, and maybe they help with the Haskell problems you might have. Another problem is that Plutus is brand new, which of course is also very exciting, but it also means that you and I and the Plutus team are the first people ever in the history of humanity that write Plutus code. So if you learn another programming language and you get stuck or have a problem, then normally you can just go to Stack Overflow or Google, and often you'll be lucky and find an answer. So because we are the first, you won't have that option. So we have to figure it out while we go along.